today's video, we're diving into how being sovereign in your energy allows more of your authentic self to come out. And how what is so key to this is setting clear energetic boundaries. So welcome. I am Joshua, and this channel is devoted to helping you align your energy. And what exactly is an energetic boundary? It sounds very ethereal. It sounds like there's like there's an edge in the space that magically blocks things from entering in, but not exactly. It's more like an energetic boundary is when you're solid in your own sense of self and in your own frame. And it's understanding that when you feel more centered in your own energy, this actually does relate to the law of attraction. Because when you are vibrating in a state where you're like grounded and you're in your own truth, and you also are solid in like what is okay and what's not okay in your value system, you're less likely to attract other people even violating your boundaries in the first place. And even when something comes in that you need to make a boundary with, because you already have those energetic boundaries, those energetic yeses and nos, it's much easier to just be like, no, or to be like, yes. And this relates to the idea that we live in a field of influence. Thinking much like the radio station, right? That we live in this, like the universe is energy, right? We're energy, and depending on the frequency that we're tuning into, we're receiving whatever that radio station is. So everyone is also broadcasting a frequency, and that frequency has an influence. So the field of influence also applies to, say, why certain crystals have specific frequencies or healing qualities. Every human being is the same way, and this also relates to the idea of like thought forms, right? That in the collective consciousness, things have their own pendulum or their own influence. I believe they talk about this in reality transurfing. And that depending on how you relate with these influences is also how you create your own reality. All right, I'm just gonna try and keep this. This is like kind of a little bit on the fringe, but we're gonna bring it in to just be really practical. So this applies to energetic boundaries because everything has an influence, everything has an energy, including you. So everyone is an influencer, by the way. You influence by the nature of who you're being. But also understand that much like if you watch, which I don't, the news, like mainstream news or whatever, why it's all like fear and propaganda is because it's happening on that frequency. But also understand that the people that are writing the scripts for those programs have their own intentions. They want to influence the collective in a certain way. But when you start to understand that the well-being on this planet far outweighs, and in the universe far outweighs the negative things that are going on, we start to take a look at also integrating our own shadow. And I'm not saying avoiding the negative. I'm saying that if you're constantly tuning into those influences and you're not being energetically sovereign, then you're at the whim of all of these other influences. And then it's just like wherever your attention goes, your energy flows, and you start going down these rabbit holes that cause everything to look a certain way because it's like you're under a hypnotic spell in a certain sense. Do you ever see those hypnotic videos? What's that guy's name? He's like this famous magician where he like puts people under, and then he gets them to do like ridiculous things. Like there's this one where my dad actually showed me this. I'm gonna watch it with my brother, where they're like passing around he's passing around an invisible joint, and each person's like, and they're all under hypnosis, so they think it's real, and they're like, oh, and then they like pass out or whatever, pass it to the next person, and then it gets this one dude, and the magician comes and takes the, like right as the guy's about to get it, and the guy's like, why you gotta do me like that, man? And then he takes it, the magician's like, and then he stomps it on the ground, and then he comes out with like a, a hypnotically it's an invisible, but the guy believes it's a bong because he's under influence of the hypnosis. He hands it to him. He's like, oh my God. But it was like, because he was under the hypnosis, he believes that it's real. And also the magician is holding this thing, and it's like, all right, let's get a little trippy on this for a second. Because the guy that's under hypnosis has a certain value around smoking cannabis and associates a certain sense of enjoyment, a certain sense of relief, that he would be sad that someone could take that feeling away from him. And then he would be happy when someone could give that, because he's associated that feeling within himself of being high with smoking the cannabis. But if you didn't have that belief system, it wouldn't matter if you were under that hypnosis, because you wouldn't associate the cannabis with that. It's but basically what I'm saying is that we're the ones that give our power away, because we look at these external things, whether it be like that person smoking cannabis makes them feel good, or that person can give them that or not give them that, and so they would feel happy or sad. These are all ways that we externalize our validation and our happiness. And then just to wrap up this field of influence thing, like think of you're driving down a road and you were to just zoom out and think every advertisement that you would ever see on that road is coming from the vibration of the person who created it and has its own intention, right? It's almost like look at your life, and like you're moving down the highway of life, and now think that like everything in a way is sending out its advertisement to the universe of what it's vibrating, like what it resonates as, and those things can be very beneficial. Like a crystal can be resonating at a certain frequency, and people believe that it means this. And so therefore, because they believe that, and perhaps it is vibrating in that frequency, they can experience healing benefit from it. At the same time, if we're constantly seeking external validation, we live in a type of illusion where everything is seeking to get our energy. And also, this is also what creates codependency, is that now it's like, because we didn't receive certain needs being met as a child, like for me, like my parents splitting up and being, my inner child being like feeling like it was abandoned, and then my parents like working and not being around and stuff. So I felt like there were certain things that I didn't receive earlier on, that then I could see how I would try to create like more security by attaching to certain relationships that I had later in life. I could see the same kind of dynamics of those like attachment patterns of like either like anxious attachment or either like avoidant, like being avoidant to intimacy. Because it's it's like the attaching to it is trying to get it so that it won't leave. But if you're avoiding it, it's also like, well, if I avoid it, then I won't be hurt. It's like both kind of like power dynamics. And there's this book that was really pivotal in my spiritual awakening that came to me like 2012, 2013, called The Celestine Prophecy. And they talked about basically these power dynamics and how they saw that when people would basically, they called it like be aloof. Basically, it was like they would not be fully present with people, and they would act mysterious and aloof, and it was a way of getting people's attention that was entrained from that childhood and societal conditioning, because they weren't internally sourcing their love. And it was the same thing with people that would really try to constantly get your attention, or people that would try to manipulate others for power. And they related that to all the way from like the individual to the collective, that even if you look at control and borders and people invading or conflicts between countries or wars, that it's all based on scarcity, and it's all based on separation, and it's all based on control. But it's like the same energy dynamics, just on a bigger level, of basically what the book was pointing at is that anytime you try to source your power outside of yourself, you create a victim perpetrator dynamic, and you create an energetic cord with that person or that thing or that addiction or that attachment. And it makes it, even if you gain power through it, you can't sustain that power because you're drawing power from an outside source. And basically that the solution is to find the source within yourself and plugging into the divine source. So, and that's finding that connection within ourselves and being able to be like, okay, where is it that I'm giving away my power? Because also, if you're playing the victim and you're repeatedly in that role, there's a dynamic that's going on internally that's causing you to continually attract that. Because there's also a payoff for that. There's a payoff for it being someone else's fault that your life is the way it is. And I'm not whitewashing anything bad that may have happened to you or anyone else. It's whatever we feel, and whatever our truth is about whatever happens is valid to us. It's valid to you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you're repeatedly getting the same dynamic over and over again, and it's like there's a part of you of your shadow that's actually feeding off of that in a certain sense. And I've seen this within myself. It's like we almost get this like righteous entitlement, and then we get all of this attention from others because we get to be the poor me. And that's actually what they talk about in the Celestine Prophecy too, is the poor me is the other one. There's like 4 of them. And the poor me is like, and actually it's a mechanism for getting attention. And that's what they're talking about, is that these manipulative ways of getting energy are just ways of getting other people's attention because of needs that weren't met in our childhood. So when we go in and basically reparent ourselves, and another powerful technique that I've worked with is inner realm journey, where you go in and you meet with your inner child. I'm going to be uploading this meditation soon, where basically you go in and you allow your inner child to resolve with any character from your past or your parents, and you're also able to reparent your inner child and have a meeting with your higher self, meet with your inner soulmate. Basically, there's these ways of integrating these parts of our psyche that allow us to connect to the source within us and to become our own inner authority. Because becoming your own inner authority is like becoming your own father. It's like it's connecting to the Divine Mother. It's having that divine reparentage, because other than that, we have these power dynamics that are ways of getting other people's attention. That's what I noticed in high school. I had the aloof pattern. I'd always be the kind of guy, like mysterious, off in the corner. But it was a way of getting attention, because if I didn't ever reveal too much of myself, but then I felt isolated. But then that even had a payoff, because then I didn't have to be fully vulnerable with people, because I was afraid that if I was vulnerable with people, they would see me for who I really am. And what's so interesting is that the fear of being seen for who you really are, getting through that is actually what allows you to be seen for who you really are, which is to be appreciated. And we all want to be appreciated. But like being able to give that appreciation to myself and realize that it's okay for me to be vulnerable. And also what I noticed was that aloof pattern was because I wasn't fully comfortable with being quiet, because I have a very introspective side of myself, and it was like I'd feel uncomfortable in group settings and also tune into other people's energy. So I was concerned about what they were thinking about me. And this happens to a lot of empaths, right? And then you don't even know what they're thinking about you, because half of it is you could be tuning into what they're thinking, and the other part of it is that you're on edge, you're on defense, and you're looking to tune into other people's energies, and what's really tripping you up is not what other people are thinking. This is something that was so pivotal to this whole sovereignty thing. It doesn't matter what anybody else is thinking. What matters is that you're tuning into what you think that they're thinking. Because sometimes you can't even tell what they're thinking. And now you're thinking about what other people are thinking about, because you care what other people think about you. But if you don't care what other people think about you, it doesn't matter. You don't think about what they're thinking. And then they can think whatever they want to think about you. That's what I had to realize with breaking through this barrier, because this has been my calling for years, to be sharing these videos and helping people along their spiritual awakening journey. I've benefited from so much from other people sharing their journeys and the internet, and how this actually helped me to, with meditation and with my own spirit guides, to actually go on a journey where I connected with like my tribe, with like-minded people. But back then, like 2012, 13, like I didn't really know anybody who was into this stuff. And so that was like, that core part of that created a value for me, that I wanted to be of service and share this. And now that I'm coming to this place where I'm like, it's like actually allowing yourself to be seen is also being able to like be solid in your own sense of self. And in those situations where we're thinking about what other people are thinking about, it's because it's that external, it's trying to find that validation outside of ourselves. Because whether or not you are having like, oh my God, people think this amazing thing, like they gave me this great comment, or you're like, oh no, they gave me this bad comment, even getting attached to people thinking like good things about you is a rabbit hole. And like, that's how rock stars go off the deep end. That's how people get, that's how like celebrities start to think that they are what all these people think that they are. You're not what other people think you are. Like what other people think about you, whether it's praise or criticism, is in a way more about what they see in you than anything to do with you. And that has to do also with like valuing authenticity, and also why the greatest artists are not really that concerned about criticism, because you're in service to the art. You're not in service to, oh, what are they going to think about me? That's what the most cutting edge and the most impactful people and the most magnetic people embody that energy, because it's more about your values than a public opinion. And then when you're not like needing other people to like you, then everybody wants to love on you. But then at the same time, if you're too obsessed with what other people aren't going to like about you, you'll never do anything. So when you're solid in the frame, there's another popular YouTuber, Aaron Doughty, has a really awesome video called The Frame Technique. Really helpful. I'm talking about the same thing. But when you're solid in your frame, you get into the flow. So to me, the frame is the masculine. It's being solid. It's like the structure, right? It's being in your body. It's being in your own frame of reference. It's being in your own point of view. It's like, yeah, I got an opinion on reality because I'm like a fractal god. What? And when you're like solid in that and you're tuned into your own energy, then you start and you're connected into source, and you start sourcing that, because source just infinitely loves you. It's the divine source, right? It's like having that sense of like worthiness and having that sense of that. It's like the source of creativity. It's a source of inspiration. It's a source. It's your true self. It's like when you connect into that, you're not so in your ego and so in your head, you get into the flow. And it's like the flow fills into the frame. Like think of like a frame, like a picture frame, right? An artist that sits down like a painter at a canvas. The canvas is the structure. You may not think of it that way, but it's what holds the painting. It's the frame. And then the flow is the actual painting inside of it, which is infinite creativity. It's fluid. It's like the formless becoming the form on the canvas. So when you have a solid frame, you have more flow. And that's also why like the feminine feels safe with like a strong masculine. We have those energies within ourselves. But if like you're constantly doubting yourself, it's like your frame's not solid. And then it's like the paint is moving all over the place. And it's like, it's kind of like the idea of a vessel and the water. Right? The water fits in any vessel, but the vessel is the thing that holds the water. And 5 ways to help with the being sovereign and setting clear energetic boundaries is 1, to free up bandwidth. Right? It's like that, remembering that field of influence is like, what vibration are you tuning into? Because we only have so much bandwidth, right, to our attention. That's why the power of focus, like where your focus goes, your energy flows, and whatever you continue to, it grows. So being aware of where you're putting your attention, because that's where you're putting your power. That's what you're giving. You're giving attention to things based on your values. So like, what are your values? Do you value freedom? Do you value authenticity? Do you value self-expression? Do you value having time? Do you value being with yourself? Do you value connecting deeply with other people? Like, what do you value? Do you value the earth? And like acting according to and giving focus based on your values. Like for me, what I realized is that I value consciousness, and I value well-being, and I value seeing the infinite possibilities, and I value tuning into this larger field. And so therefore, I'm not going to give my attention to this BS news, because there's news happening newly now. Whatever you put your focus on. And energetic hygiene is another one. Energetic hygiene is being aware of where those energy leaks are in our field. Because when we're not solid in our own energy, and we have one of those power dynamics going on, it creates an energy leak, even if it was in the past. So one powerful technique is going in and feeling where that might be in your energy, in your body, and in your field, and actually clearing those, letting go of those cords of attachment, and just like imagining that energy being sealed up. Imagining like a bubble, like a protective bubble, and breathing in this energy just like filling you and feeling safe in your field as well. Like it's like your frame, your field, and your flow. And 3, hone your discernment, because everything has an influence and an intention. It's important to be able to see where that pendulum is operating from, where that rabbit hole is leading, and be like, is this really aligned with, does this feel aligned? Does this feel resonant in my body, in my solar plexus, or in my heart? Do I truly resonate with this? Am I going to feed my attention on this? and also speaking your truth, because what you speak, you're speaking into existence. So the speech is that vibration, and you're also like voting with your attention and with your words. It's like voting with vibrational dollars. So if you're constantly like, oh, it's the government's fault, or oh, it's the world, or whatever, or whoever, you're voting for that this external authority has the rule over your life. Like, you believe that, and your thoughts create your reality. So sourcing your own internal authority and realizing that you are the powerful one that has the ability to speak into reality, and that you are a world citizen. It's like reframing the whole thing, that you actually, like, your voice matters, and that your energy matters, and you broadcast and tune into and attract based on that. And 4, leading with authentic energy, leading with your heart. Like, when you tune into that value system and you hone that discernment, it's like now you're able to be more clear in what it is that you want to create and what your vision is. And now you're actually living each day, like going to sleep, feeling gratitude for the day, tuning into the vision of who you want to embody and become. And like, you're like living in your own vision. And that's what being a visionary is as well, like realizing you're the creator of your own reality, where you're also a creator in the world. So if you have like gifts and services to offer other people, then that's like whatever you create is coming from within you. And the last thing is Wu Wei. And this is a Taoist term that means basically effortless action, or no force. It means operating in accordance with nature, with the flow of nature. And the reason I bring this up when we're talking about sovereignty, when we're talking about energetic boundaries, is because Wu Wei, in a sense, is like no attack, no defense. And what I mean by this is, when you're setting these boundaries, it's really you living in your own vision and momentum and energy so strongly that you're attracting based on that. It's not setting up all these walls to try and protect yourself and defend yourself against something, or what you're imagining the future might hold for you, because then you're living in a stance of defense. And when you're living in a stance of defense against an imagined future, you're creating an expectation of what's going to happen. And your expectations are beliefs, which create your reality. They create the context of which you're attracting based off, or like the reflection that you're going to get. So if you're constantly living in trying to defend yourself, trying to protect yourself, it's like coming from this ego fear of death. And it's like when you let go of that fear and you realize you are going to die, like your physical self your ego is going to die, and that your soul is eternal. In a way, it's like kind of getting over this, like constantly living in fear and like going in and processing those emotions of where we didn't feel safe. Then when we process those emotions, we don't constantly feel like we have to try to defend ourselves to feel safe. Someone said that you only think about safety when you don't feel safe, or when you're in that frequency bandwidth. But when you're in a place of feeling super solid, you're not even thinking about that. And it's like how to be aware of where your energy is at. And at the same time, it's like if you're constantly living in trying to attack, like trying to fix the problem, or trying to change the problem, or you're focusing on the problem and you're fighting against something, and that creates more resistance. And you're continuing to attract based on where your focus is. And that's where I'm saying it's somewhere in the middle, where now you're focused on the solution, which is you being in the sovereignty of your choice of what you align with vibrationally. And that's the context, that's the frame, and that the flow of your expression and your creativity, and also like the magnetic energy of like what you attract on, becomes based on your values, and you're like living according to those values. And this is just something that I'm learning to do, because that's what I find too, is that even if you have a really positive cause, if you're constantly fighting against something, you're creating an enemy for you to fight. But the best way to not fight is to not fight. It's to vote in the direction of what you want and to create in that direction, and actually gives you more momentum and more power. And also, like, this is the thing too with kind of like revolutionaries energy. That's the same thing with Mother Teresa, that she would not go to anti-war rallies because she said that the whole thing was drenched in the energy of war. Because it's like, are you going to be anti something, or are you going to be pro peace? Like, an anti-war rally is a very different vibration than a peace rally. Just thinking about that, because this one's focused on the problem, the other one's focused on the solution. They're on very different vibrational frequencies. One is railing against, one is in a positive momentum towards, which is going to create more power in your life. Because if you're constantly fighting against anything, you're living in a force of struggle, you're outside of the natural course of nature, and you're going to start to be stressed out and degrade because you're out of alignment. And that is what dis-ease is. You're not in a state of ease, you're not in a state of flow. So being able to like actually take responsibility of the ability to respond and to forgive is forgiving it up to spirit, forgiving your gifts. It's forgiveness is for your ability to give, actually, for you to be of service to the planet. And so when we do that, that is the most sovereign thing you can do, because now you're living in your own frame, you're living in your own flow, and you're creating based on your values, based on your discernment, and actually having the freedom, the emotional freedom, the vibrational freedom to be able to tune into these frequencies and be able to co-create and play in as a conscious creator. Like, that's what we came here to do. Like, that's what the most fun is. So really the question is what do you define sovereignty as? What do you define freedom as? What do you value that as? And finding ways to live according to your values regardless of external conditions is becoming greater than your conditioning. It's becoming unconditionally loving. It's stepping into that awareness that is greater than anything that we've gone through, but appreciates all of it and loves all of it and sees that it's all a part of it, kind of stepping into that higher perspective and being able to appreciate and see through the eyes of Source and recognize that from that perspective, we are always free. Abraham Hicks says something really interesting, which is, you are so free that you can choose bondage. See, because when we're so busy thinking that we're a victim, we think that everything is happening to us and that we have no choice. But as we start to reclaim our power, we start to realize that everything in the universe actually is happening for us and is empowering us to even have a choice at all. Because without that contrast, we wouldn't be birthing new desires that would give us all this, what we would now want to align with. And then even as we align with that, we expand more. And we expand more, and we expand more. It's like connecting into that life force and being able to reclaim that within ourselves. To me, that is sovereignty. So, thanks for tuning in. If you want to leave in the comments, what does it mean to be sovereign AF? And if you liked it, awesome. If you didn't like it, okay. And Also, I'm doing like really regular videos, getting to the point of daily videos. So just because of how YouTube works, in order for you to be notified of those things, you would get to click the bell, which would ding you specifically on your phone, which I think is really awesome. I do that for like my favorite creators and things that I just want to stay super tuned into. And peace, blessings, and we'll see you in the next Frame and Flow.